Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we explore the future and what this means for your leadership. We ask the big questions. What's happening on the horizon? What does this mean for us? And most importantly, what skills do I need now for leadership of the future? It's time to explore. Let's go.
Hello there, it's Zoe, and welcome to a solosode. Yes, it's time to get stuck into some really cool things. And if you're feeling stuck, then be useful. That's my agenda for today. And I got started on this topic because I was out with a friend of mine, and she said she got some feedback at work. Don't you love that feedback? Which, you know, the tone of it means she got some slap to the head. That's what it felt like. And she said they told her at work she didn't get a promotion because she wasn't confident enough and didn't speak up enough. And that just made me mad. Not because of the feedback, not because maybe it's true, but because the next part of her story was, well, the guy who got promoted, who got the job, was an arrogant prat. So he was full of himself. He bragged about his accomplishments and appeared very confident, but not necessarily competent. And that just makes me so angry. And yes, organizations are still making that mistake. We're making the mistake of perceiving confidence and thinking it's competence. And it's not. Those two things are definitely different. And narcissists and psychopaths know this really well. So they're very good at espousing confidence and getting positions of influence. So, and I think it just goes hand in hand with big mistakes that women make in particular of assuming that their accomplishments will speak for themselves. I'm doing a great job. I'm always deliver. Surely someone will notice, pat me on the back and give me a promotion. No, no, sometimes that doesn't happen. And I've written about this in an article recently too on my blog, which you haven't signed up for my blog, go to zoerouth.com, click on blog, sign up there so you can get the deep dive articles and the tip sheets and everything. What I wrote about is sometimes we are so competent that our bosses don't want to promote us because we're super useful in our positions where we are. And that doesn't serve us as well. And double disservice is when we don't tell anybody about our accomplishments. We don't toot our own horn for fear of blaring our own horn. Tooting our own horn? Yeah. Anyway, sometimes we don't speak up for ourselves about our accomplishments because we feel that's bragging, like said guy who got the promotion. And we think, if I just continue to be a good girl and perform, somebody will notice, I'll get the opportunities. No. So what is one to do? Well, I have lots of tips around that, and I'm going to share some of those tips for you today. And I'm going to tell you where else you can get more tips, and that's in my upcoming program called Grace Under Fire, How to Exercise Power Without Losing Your Soul, and addendum, looking like a total jerk. I want you in this program to be seen, heard, and valued. I want you to hone your power and get promoted. And what we will do is we'll practice getting visible, developing our voice, and expanding our vision. The program isn't open for enrollments yet, but you can sign up for early notice, therefore to get the early bird discounted rate. The link is in the show notes. Information about the program is there. We'll be running it in September. It will be a virtual program. All right. And so, yes, for people like my friend who says, I didn't get promoted, somebody else got promoted over me because they were more ballsy. Okay, we'll end that crisis by taking some action. All right. Right, rant over. On planet Human, we have discovered water crystals on Mars. That was in the news as I was listening to it this morning, which is super cool. We need water on Mars to be found so that we can actually set up long-term communities on Mars. And yahoo, as we suspected, there is water there, which is super cool. Other space news on Planet Human, not on Planet Human, actually the Planet Human off-world, Chang'e, which is the space explorer from China, landed on the dark side of the moon and is bringing back soil samples from that side. It's the first time any craft has landed successfully and is coming back home. How cool is that? So apart from the cool factor, which as a space nerd I think is very cool and exciting, it speaks to geopolitical competition which could possibly be cooperation. It's one of the futures I explore in my novels, particularly after Olympus Rising in book number 4, which I have not started writing yet, but is percolating in the back of my brain at the moment. This kind of new geopolitical cooperation or competition is going to feed into tensions on Earth. There are resources on the moon, I think, that we'll end up wanting to use here back on Earth. Helium-3 is one of them if we develop the technology to turn that into clean energy. That is definitely something I explore in Olympus Bound, and which is out right now, and Olympus Rising. There are questions you need to be asking yourself as a leader about this. You might say, space race, who cares? It's nowhere near my business. I am CEO of a hospitality organization. How does this relate to me? Well, it might relate to you because some of your clients and their businesses might be interested in changing tack, thinking about how they might service the space industry, the space tourism industry, thinking about how supply and demand of resource materials that go into the space race might affect supply chain of your clients and indeed of your business. I talked about this on another podcast. And I think these types of questions we need to be gestating on because that helps us be resilient and prepared for what's coming. Or you might have an ambition to go to space too. All right. Okay, that is Planet Human. On Planet Zoe, it's all about my creative space right now. Olympus Rising, which is the 3rd book in the Gaia series, is with the editor. So he's plowing through that and doing the developmental edits for me. That's the first round of edits. Olympus Bound, the 2nd book in this series, so well received. The reviews are amazing. I'm so grateful. I had so much fun writing that book. That is out. It has been out since May. And get yourself a copy, either a copy signed by me from my website, do support the author direct, or through online retail stores such as Amazon. You can get it anywhere you like. The other creative energy that I had to slow down. On the weekend, I had so much going on in my head. I woke up at 4 and I had to map it all out. So my office is now full of butcher's papers of all these different projects I have going on to be useful and to be in service to you. The other book I'm working on is my next nonfiction book called Power Games. And I've started to do the outlining and research for that. And alongside that is the Grace Under Fire program, which I mentioned previously. So there is a lot of creative stuff happening in my world, which is unusual for this time of year. Normally I just slink away and hide in a corner and try and stay warm. However, here we are. I'm also working on the revamp of the podcast. This is part of the whole creative reinvention piece. And that will be coming August, September. So I will still be podcasting. The topic, the name of the show will probably change. I'm still working on that. And the structure will probably change. It will still be about fit for the future leadership. Okay, that's all you need to know for the moment. Now, back to the takeaways and helpful tips for you. Feeling stuck? Be useful. I love that phrase. And Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote his autobiography, and that was this title, Be Useful. And it's a piece of advice he got from his own dad. And I love that because if you are feeling stuck, and a lot of people in my industry are feeling stuck because in the leadership business, the consulting business, it's the canary in the coal mine for a recession. Often our businesses drop off before everybody else's businesses do because we're seen as a luxury item, which is silly because what we saw in COVID is, not a luxury item, actually a necessity to help build the capacity of our people. Anywho, when you don't have the money, we get cut. So recession, a lot of my peers are struggling. Our businesses are slowing down. And for me, that's fine because in the winter, that's usually when I'm slow anyway. And at the moment, I have all this creative power, energy coursing through me. So it's good. If that's you, if you're feeling stuck, whether you're an entrepreneur, author, or at work because you're not getting promoted because such and such got promoted instead, if you're feeling stuck that way, be useful. And the first tip for that is get visible. Get visible. How? How can you get visible? Well, First thing is help someone. Help someone. It could be as little as sharing a good book. One of my books, say, for example, recommend a good book to someone, or an article that you read, or a podcast that you listen to. Share something that's of value. You think, oh, I was thinking about you, Susan or Joe, and I thought you might enjoy this. This is what I got out of it. Here you go. Doing that is being useful. All right? It doesn't have to be a major thing. And the next tip is be a giver. And I'm taking this straight from Adam Grant in his book, Givers and Takers. I love that book. I've talked about it before, and I've written a review for it. His basic research shows who's more successful at work, giver, taker, or matchers. A giver is somebody who gives. A taker, as is implied, just takes from other people. A matcher is somebody who gives stuff and takes stuff, and kind of an equal balance. His research showed, well, who do you think is more successful? His research shows, most people say matchers. Research shows it's actually being a giver with a caveat. So givers are more successful as long as they also ask for things for themselves, but not necessarily in a tit-for-tat arrangement. They might be generous in giving if somebody asks for help, or they offer help. And when it comes to needing help of their own, in the form of advice or support or whatever, they don't necessarily go back to the people they asked help from. They ask somebody who's relevant and appropriate to them. And so they take action to support themselves and not just drain their battery by being a giver. And if we're going to get unstuck and be useful, we need to leverage this law of reciprocity. So this is kind of a bit of a paradox, be a giver, be a taker, and also leverage the law of reciprocity. You want to build your be useful bank account, your BIBA. What you don't want to do is turn into a matcher. Well, like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. That's implied in the law of reciprocity, but you just end up being like slimy. So don't do things because you want to create favors for people. You want the be useful bank account because it builds your own self-esteem as somebody who is resourceful and helpful to others. That's the main thing. And people start to elevate you in their mind when you position yourself as someone who is a great resource to others. So be a giver is part of that. So we've got get visible and be a giver. Now, in being a giver, what's helpful about this also is you start seeing problems around you that you can solve. So you start looking at where you can add value by solving problems. This in turn helps you be a great team player and helps develop you as a systems thinker. Incredibly valuable in organizations and teams. So you start to exercise the skills of being a problem solver, a team player, and a systems thinker, positioning you to be more visible and therefore front of mind. Then you just need to develop your voice, which we'll cover in the Grace Under Fire program, as I mentioned, that's coming up in September. The third tip for you is to be a taker. So get visible, be a giver, and be a taker. This is, again, the Adam Grant philosophy. And in being a taker, ask for advice. Ask for advice from your supervisor. This does a double job of then, my language, I was about to say buttering up your boss. Let's rephrase that. Asking advice from your supervisor positions you as someone who sees their supervisor as valuable, which makes them feel valuable, which in turn makes them feel warmly towards you. Yeah, it kind of feels like manipulation if your intent is to manipulate your boss. And yet, you're building relationships. So you also want to be asking for advice or insight or support from someone else you want to build your alliances with. You want to strengthen your network here. So it's not just about being visible and valuable to your boss. It's across the organization. So you can strengthen your position in the business and be visible across the business. So step number 3, be a taker. Number 4, let's try that again. Do something you love. Do something you love. Just, if it's all getting too hard at work and you're like, this all feels like power games, which it is not. It's about positioning yourself well. Do something you love, and it doesn't have to be at work. It could be at home, reading a book, getting in the garden, going skiing, going for a run, whatever. Reminds you that this is planet human that you are playing a human game on. And it's not always about work. Be a human who enjoys life, living. Because when you are being a human that's enjoying life and living, you start to radiate different kind of energy and you become a magnet. A magnet. That's really what we want for you. Okay, so doing something you love is the bonus tip. So feeling stuck, be useful. The ways to do that are be visible by being useful, be a giver, be a taker, and be a magnet. All right, I hope you found this sweet little solosode useful to you. And I look forward to hearing your insights about how you go with this. If you want to get down and dirty and deeper with all these concepts, join us at Grace Under Fire. The link for the information about the program is in the show notes. In the meantime, lead. I can't remember anything today. Oh my goodness. Live with grace, lead in service. Live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. To find out more about leadership of the future or to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.